Welcome to the Athena Wellness Podcast, the show that invites you to take a seat around the community fire and listen to stories that inspire. I'm your host, Kathy Robinson, author, coach, and founder of Athena Wellness, a company that's dedicated to supporting you as you create your next chapter, turning life transitions into transformation. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that I have a new free resource. It's a short guide titled 5 Questions to Explore a Soulful Second Chapter, and it's perfect if you're thinking of leaving your professional career and considering what's next. You can download it at athenawellness.com/reimagine, and I'll also put a link in the show notes so you can check it out. Hello and welcome, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's continue with our midlife coaching conversation series inspired by a student who asks, "You always talk about living from the heart. What does that mean and how do I do it?" Last week, we explored how to design a stillness practice that's tailored to your needs and life, including considerations for those establishing a practice, as well as ways to go deeper for those who have a current practice. The episode concluded with an invitation to pick an activity you enjoy that helps you connect with your inner guidance and design a practice you look forward to each day. Today, we'll talk about how to harness the energy these practices generate and how to best utilize that power. Let me start by saying that even though this episode is titled Your Inner Jedi, I know very little about Star Wars. I was a kid when the first movie was released, and my sister took me to the local drive-in to watch it. Yeah, I'm aging myself. But the reason why the word Jedi comes to mind is an experience I had 42 years later. The year I was leaving my corporate career, I attended a retreat in Italy hosted by podcasters Julie Pyatt and Rich Roll. During a group Q&A, I asked Rich about leaving his career as a lawyer to become an entrepreneur. Specifically, what insight could he share about stepping into the unknown? He shared 5 things that I'll list here and we'll go through one by one. 1. Have faith in the journey and remain emotionally neutral along the way. 2. Practice by setting the intention of being a conduit for your best self. 3. Do what you love as much as possible. 4. Embrace the hero's journey with deep presence. And 5, know the path creates itself through stillness and knowing your true north. Then he looked at me, our eyes locked, and he said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, "You're effing Luke Skywalker, man." Now, in that moment, I had no idea what he meant, but I could feel his passion and support for my journey and how closely it mirrored his. That's why I was drawn to him. He walked the path I wanted to walk and was living a life completely aligned to who he truly was, not who he tried to be in the past. And I wanted that. There are 2 things I hope you take away from today's episode. The first is the basic takeaway from Rich's advice. And the second is how that advice has deepened with meaning over the years. It's been 5 years since that retreat, and it's only now that I can see the true wisdom in what he said. We'll come back to each point he made, but before we do, here's a little Jedi primer. In Star Wars, Jedis are space knights who find their power through stillness. In training themselves to be calm and centered, they become more in tune with the Force, an energy field that flows through the universe and is used for good, which is Luke Skywalker's journey. If the Jedis don't cultivate stillness, the Force can be clouded by emotions like anger or fear. In this podcast series, we've been talking about ways to connect with your inner wisdom through your still point. And in the last few episodes, we focused on practices to strengthen that connection. In doing so, you reclaim your power, in other words, the force, in several ways. 1. Clarity. You handle life challenges and make better decisions when your mind is calm. 2. Self-awareness. Your practices help you become more aware of and less attached to negative emotions and habits. And 3. Self-reliance. When you consistently connect with your inner power, you trust that guidance explicitly. Now let's explore the advice that Rich offered. For each of his 5 points, I'll give you the Jedi perspective, my initial interpretation, and my perspective today. 1. Have faith in the journey and remain emotionally neutral along the way. The Jedi perspective. Trust in the Force, stay centered, and detach from outcome. My initial interpretation. Embrace new experiences and neutralize your fear. My perspective today. New experiences dismantle deeply embedded habits and old ways of thinking. While there's no certainty in life, faith is a different kind of knowing. It's a deep understanding that you're supported in the next aligned step. 2. Practice by setting the intention of being a conduit for your best self each morning. The Jedi perspective. Focus on the light side of the Force each day. My initial interpretation. Use my morning practice to focus on embodying qualities I wanted in my work and life, and use my evening practice to reflect and note signs and synchronicities that I'm on the right path. My perspective today. Use my morning practice to clear the way for source energy to work through me and connect with my inner wisdom to guide my decisions and actions. 3. Do what you love as much as possible. The Jedi perspective. Using your strengths will keep you aligned with the Force. My initial interpretation. Enjoy how you get to spend your time as you launch this new endeavor. My perspective today. The term "do what you love" used to trip me up. In the early days of Athena Wellness, every task needed to create an operational business felt heavy, and the learning curve was steep. It was a practice in itself to connect everyday activities to the bigger vision. Once the infrastructure was in place, it was easier to align my strengths, writing, podcasting, teaching, and coaching, and push my edges, technology, video, editing, while being in flow. Only recently, while working on a client project that I'll speak more about in the coming months, did I feel pure joy as I created. For me, it's joyful to bring my experience and whole self into my work that will find its way to help others. And it's from this space, this energetic vibration, that I want to live and work. 4. Embrace the hero's journey with deep presence. The Jedi perspective. To mindfully journey through life in peace, knowledge, serenity, harmony, and aligned with the Force. My initial interpretation. Intellectually, I knew I was heading into unknown territory and the journey would be long and winding. But my mind was still firmly rooted in my corporate thinking, and I expected immediate results and substantial success. It was humbling, and I learned a lot. My perspective today. I wasn't ready back then. I hadn't become the person who could produce the outcomes that would lead to those levels of success. Looking back, it was the obstacles I overcame that helped me find my own potential. It was the daily process of being present and checking in with my inner guidance that led me to where I am today, and I'm grateful for the slower start. It gave me time to lay a solid foundation to build a healthy business for the long term. And 5, know the path creates itself through stillness and knowing your true north. The Jedi perspective. You'll always know where you are by connecting with the Force through your still point. My initial interpretation. Envision your path and check in through meditation and journaling to make sure you're heading in the right direction. My perspective today. You have no idea what the path is or where it's leading. Your job is to know and trust the next step. You do this through stillness, introspection, and staying connected to your core values. If I had to sum it all up, it's this. The path to a heart-led life unfolds organically as you connect with your inner wisdom and take aligned action. Your job is to remain calm, faithful, and trust the process. There's a beautiful divinity in it all, in a spiritual sense. As poet Antonio Machado wrote, there is no path. The path is made by walking. By walking, the path is made. As we bring this episode to a close, I'd like to leave you with some Jedi lessons for heart-led living to contemplate. 1. Quiet your mind. Find a practice that brings inner peace so you can hear your heart's desires. 2. Follow your intuition. Trust your inner force and make decisions that align and resonate with your heart. 3. Let go of attachment. Once you set your direction, let go of outcome and external validation so you can enjoy the journey. 4. Cultivate compassion. Be kind to yourself and others along the way, staying true to your values and fostering genuine connection. And 5. Serve a greater good. Align your work, whether it's paid or not, to something larger than yourself, an offering that contributes positively to the world. And we'll talk more about this last point next week. I'll leave you today with the words Rich Roll said to me 5 years ago as I began my post-corporate hero's journey. Quote, "You're effing Luke Skywalker, man." Unquote. Wise words. And I encourage you to embrace your effing inner Jedi. Have an amazing day, and I'll meet you right back here next week for part 7 of this series on heart-led living. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know there are many ways you can spend your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with me. Until our paths cross again, be kind to yourself and show your warrior spirit some love. If you know anyone who could benefit from today's episode, please pass it on. And many thanks for supporting the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It means a lot, and it helps others find their way to our circle. If you'd like to access the show notes, have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode, or would like a transcript of this episode, visit www.athenawellness.com/podcast. Until next time, be well.